places are not that important. And what matters is the experience as a whole, and what you learn from it, how you react to winning and losing. You can be a bad loser, you can also be a really bad winner. And I think having something else in my life that was also really important to me gave me a bit of perspective on it.
In this episode, I'm talking with Dr. Emma Pooley. She's an Olympic silver medalist, an ETH Zurich PhD graduate in geotechnical engineering, a world-class endurance athlete, and a most recently published cookbook author. This is the We Are ETH podcast, and I'm Susan Kish, your host. Emma, in honor of your role as an endurance athlete and marathon winner, we thought we'd make this like a 6-hour podcast.
That's great. Yeah, that's great. I've not got much left to do at work today. It's fine.
You are the embodiment of the scholar athlete, right? And so we're thrilled to have you here. But if I understand correctly, you studied maths and then engineering when you went to Cambridge. What got you into maths? Why were you interested in that?
I love maths at school. My dad's a mathematician. My little sister maybe should have been a mathematician. I always loved the logic of it. I think it's a very beautiful subject. So I went to Cambridge to study maths, and then I found it honestly too hard. It became suddenly too abstract, and never got the hang of group theory, and I panicked, I think.
What is group theory?
Well, I don't know. That was the problem. I wish someone could have explained it to me. It didn't make any sense. So I realized seriously, I realized many years later that I have a very visual mind, so I have to be able to see something in my mind to understand it. And I couldn't. So some maths I could envisage it, and some I couldn't. And I panicked with concepts that I didn't understand, and I changed to engineering. It felt like a big failure at the time. Like in retrospect, you know when you're 18 or 19 and you feel like you're too old to change your mind.
Yeah, I do.
Poor young things. It felt like a massive disaster at the time. But anyway, I changed to engineering, and the engineering at Cambridge is very general. So you can start out doing general engineering, and you only have to specialise in the 3rd and 4th years. So I thought I would become a mechanical engineer, so Maschinenbau. Actually, I became a geotech engineer, and I love it. So.
Is that where you met Sarah Springman? Was it Cambridge?
No, she was no longer at Cambridge. So I was doing my master's at the centrifuge lab in Cambridge, at the Schofield Centre, and one of the PhD students knew Sarah, and he said, I've seen this position come up for a PhD in Zurich. You should apply. You would love Sarah. She's amazing. And I said, who's Sarah? And so he must have studied under Sarah, I guess, for his bachelor. Anyway, Xavier recommended I apply, and I soon found out who Sarah was. And so I applied for the PhD position in Zurich towards the end of my master's in Cambridge, and got accepted and moved here. I moved to Zurich for maximum 4 years for my PhD, and 20 years later I'm still here.
It is slightly, I wouldn't say seductive is the right term, but it is seductive might be the right term.
Yeah. I found Switzerland, I did not enjoy living here to start with, because I went from Cambridge student life, which is very social, like you live in a college with a load of students, all people roughly your age, to Switzerland, where the PhD students they're like real grown-ups here. Like it's a job, and you're not a student living a fun, I mean, it can be fun, but there was no campus life, and felt super lonely. And I was a bit younger than most PhD students, because the master's in the UK in Cambridge was shorter, and so I didn't speak very much German, and I refused to speak English, so I was a bit isolated to start with. I was sort of counting the days till I could finish and go home. But at some point, something switched. I think I got enough German to have a conversation, and I started to really enjoy living in the mountains. And at some point, I realized that now England is a foreign country. So I'm like caught between two. And and I think after maybe 5 or 6 years, my PhD took a lot longer than I expected. After 5 or 6 years, I realized I didn't really want to move back to the UK, and so I'm still here.
If I understand correctly, you started off as a cross-country athlete, And then you only started bicycling, which is what you're best known for. If I go to a Google search, it's like bicycle, 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 bicycle.
Yeah.
When you were 22, which that feels sort of late, but I don't know too much about it.
No, you're quite right. It is a bit late. Most people who become professional cyclists cycle as children because there's a lot of skills to learn. I did cycle to school and things, but I wasn't into road cycling. It's not a very attractive, or it wasn't to me a very attractive sport. And I think unless your family is into it, normally kids don't get into it, at least back then. I borrowed a bike because I got injured running and I couldn't run for a while. And I did not like cycling. I don't know how into cycling you are, Susan, but
I don't know how to bicycle ride.
The human backside did not evolve to sit on a bike saddle. It is not a comfortable thing.
That's a great image. Right?
Yeah. It is not what we evolved for, and it protests loudly, not loudly, but painfully. And I did not enjoy it. I got cold. I didn't have the right gear. I was only doing it to sort of tide me over until I got over my injury. This is when you were still in Cambridge, or was this in Zurich?
That's
right. Yeah, in Cambridge, and it's very flat there and windy, and those are not my kind of cycling conditions. I'm actually better uphill. But what there was in Cambridge was there a really nice club, a really great club, the Cambridge Cycling Club, and people make all the difference in almost everything in life. So whether it's in a positive way or a negative way, and they're really friendly, and we would always stop there would always be a cafe stop on rides. And having come from the sport of running, where you train and you go home and you eat your dinner or your breakfast or whatever, and there's no cafe stop in the middle of a track session. Like, that would be like, it would take too long.
A spot of tea, right?
The spot of tea and a scone, and then you just puke it up on the next rep. So there's no point. So this cycling thing of like, we get to eat cake in the middle of the training. This is insane.
It's just...
Yeah, but that was a big motivator for me. And so I really got into it. And then I actually started cycling when I was 21, but I started my first race when I was 22. A university friend persuaded me to go. This was still in Cambridge, and so by the time I moved to Zurich, I think I'd done like 4 or 5 races. I'd done a few races. I'd done the nationals, and then I'd done the Tour of Brittany. I had about 3 weeks between my master's ending and my PhD beginning. So I did the Tour of Brittany, which was a nightmare. Like, I crashed. I got punctures. It was terrifying being in this bunch of crazy fast French women.
Oh, were you in the
I remember,
peloton? Right?
In the peloton, which I had
God.
never experienced. Yeah, it's terrifying, especially if you're short. You can't see over anyone's backside. Like, it's awful. And I was really bad. And I don't think I can't remember if I even finished the race. At any rate, I remember I wrote an email back to a friend mid-race, and this was before I had a laptop, right? So I found an internet cafe in France, in Brittany. I mean, and the keyboard was all wrong because of the French, they
right?
don't do keyboards
Their
properly.
Y's and Z's are in weird places. Yeah.
Anyway, I wrote this email saying, I'm so glad I'm not a professional cyclist. This is miserable. I hate it. And I came to my PhD here. I was not doing a bike race ever again. And but I did do some more bike races, but it wasn't love at first ride, let's say, with cycling at all. No.
But if you came to Switzerland at that time, which sounds like sort of a pivot point, coming to a country that has a lot of hills.
Yes.
And turning out to be really good at hills was probably quite auspicious.
It was, yeah. I mean, there's so many things that I got lucky with for my sports career. It's like an incredible series of improbable coincidences, really. So, yeah, moving to Switzerland, like, there's no way I would have succeeded in bike races in Cambridgeshire, which is really flat. It's like Holland. And even if you travelled around the UK to race, there are no big climbs. In Switzerland and the surrounding countries, if you race in Switzerland, you also race in Germany and Italy and France because they're not very far away.
Huh.
On a local team, you could do all these races with proper climbs. So that was a massive advantage that I didn't realise. But also having Sarah as my PhD supervisor, like,
she is quite the athlete.
Yeah, and she was incredibly supportive. And most PhD supervisors, if you were already an Olympian, it's a different matter. Like, then they might make an exception for you because it looks good on the website of the department or something. But I was not an Olympian. I was like a crappy amateur cyclist who kept falling off. I'd turn up every Monday with like open wounds on my elbows and knees from where I'd crashed my bike, and in the peloton because I couldn't see anything in the peloton. And And yet Sarah was incredibly supportive, and she encouraged me to keep trying, and so that was a huge lucky coincidence, because I did apply because someone recommended, but I didn't apply because I thought Sarah would give me free time to go cycling. But in the end, she's the one, she fought for me to be able to work part-time on my PhD, which is tricky. Not every professor would allow that, but otherwise there's no way I could have raced at that level. There were just too many race days. When you're racing on a professional team and training for the Olympics, I probably had 50 or 60 races a year. And
good heavens, that's like 3-4 a month. That's like every week.
Yeah. So some would be compressed into a week, so stage races like 10 days in a row. But you also have training camps, and in cycling, the structure is that you race for a team, so you can't just decide when you race. You get told and you show up. Right. And so yeah, I was really lucky to have Sarah on my side. I'm so grateful to her. And then the other lucky thing is that I have relatives who live in Perth in Australia, and Sarah let me do like an exchange with UWA, the University of Western Australia, and that meant that I started a tradition of having 2 months off work in the winter to go and train in Australia. And like now I love the Swiss winter. I love ski touring and ski mountaineering. Back then, if you were trying to train at cycling, the -20 and the snow and the ice is not great. And
unless of course you live in Sweden, in which case you put studs in your bikes, right?
Yes. I mean, yeah, if I was tough it would be fine, but I'm not tough. And so yeah, so I went.
You sound pretty tough.
No, I get really unhappy when my hands get cold. So yeah, anyway, I got into the habit of going to visit this amazing aunt of mine, Veronica, who lives in Perth, and she would let me stay with her. She's got kids as well, and so I'm a bit older than them, but I'd stay with her and train really hard, and that made a big difference to my progress, because I had a lot of catching up to do with starting so late. But yeah, those three lucky coincidences, and then maybe a fourth one, that there was a little Swiss team run by a guy called Roger Rueg and Patrick Banfi, and they were just the perfect people at the perfect time to give me an opportunity to race at a good level without having too much pressure. And yeah, it all lucked out, but yeah, I was very lucky. Yeah,
that sounds fabulous. And then you took a year off to actually finish your PhD.
Yeah, I took a year off racing, although I did still race, it turns out, but not at the same level. And it was really hard doing both. And I think anyone who's done a PhD thesis knows that you really, at some point, you just have to sit down and write the thing, and it's hard to multitask that.
I understand. Did being a scientist, not a maths, but a geotechnical engineering, which sounds most impressive, right? And if I understand correctly, you did centrifugal modeling of ground improvement for double porosity clay, which I think means like the waste from mines.
It was waste. Yeah, it's mining waste. Yeah, although the same principles apply also to reclaimed land. When you make land offshore, you dump lumps of soil or clay into the ocean or the sea or the lake. And it's the same principle. So a lot of the similar research has been done in places like Singapore, where they've been building extra land effectively. But yeah, it was, in my case, it was mining waste in Eastern Germany and in the Czech Republic. And it's interesting, but very niche. Most PhDs are very niche. And I made huge soil models and put them in what was then a big centrifuge. Now the ETH has a much bigger centrifuge, but
it was big for its time.
It was big for its time. Yeah, so I made big soil models, and it was often very hard to combine, because I had, a PhD, you also have to deliver. You have to deliver research, you have to deliver papers, you have to show up when your allotted time slot is in the centrifuge, because there has a schedule,
right? And
you have to stay awake long enough to finish your tests. And then racing with a team, or like qualifying the Olympics, it was also pretty stressful in its own way.
Yeah.
And there were times when it felt like too much, but I think it was actually overall a really good for me personally to have the two, because I find them both interesting, and I like to have the balance. And if your racing didn't go very well, then...
But your research was really interesting.
Yeah, well, on average, not always every moment, but on average, yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think, I think maybe it would have been fun for a year to do just sport, but I think it would have been boring, actually. Yeah.
So did being a scientist and being at the ETH, do you think that made you a better athlete or better? Does one say a better athlete or a better competitor?
I think it did not make me a better athlete because I was often short of sleep and sleep is everything.
Right.
But I think it made me a better person. And I think, in terms of, it's going to sound really, really cliched, but like when you're in the moment racing, every moment is really important that you win this particular race. But even with the distance of just a few weeks, and now with the distance of 10 plus years, the individual races are not that important, and what matters is the experience as a whole and what you learn from it, how you react to winning and losing. You can be a bad loser, you can also be a really bad winner, and I think having something else in my life that was also really important to me gave me a bit of perspective on it. So I'm maybe a better competitor. That was a nice suggestion. Yeah.
Was being at ETH an important part of that? Was ETH distinctive in any way around this?
Yes, and I think maybe I didn't appreciate it initially because I came from Cambridge and everything was just foreign when you move to a new country. Everything in Switzerland was strange, and it took me a while.
Although the trams are the best, aren't they?
No, they're terrible.
The trams?
If you're a cyclist.
Oh, gosh, I never thought about that.
Yes. Well, I had 2 pretty good crashes in tram tracks.
Oh my gosh, because you get caught in the track?
Yeah, the first one I got caught, and you learn never to ride parallel in the... Yeah, I mean, if you're really nifty, you can like jump out of them, but I could not. So I just went... That was the first crash.
All right, that
and then the
sounds
next
scary.
the next one was in the rain, and I was going perpendicular to the tram tracks because I didn't want to do that again. But I was also turning a corner, and then you lean, and it was wet, and the tram tracks were like ice because they were so slippery in the rain. And I just went, and I think I chipped my elbow that time. That was pretty painful. So I have to say, not a big fan of trams, but we can agree to differ.
Okay.
I can see that if you don't...
different perspective, right?
Yeah.
Like you retired sort of twice from being a professional
Yeah.
athlete. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, after my PhD, I did a year full-time in cycling in 2014, and then I decided that's it, that's enough. There were some political reasons in the sport that I was fed up in cycling.
Mm-hmm.
And I retired officially from cycling, but I went into triathlon because I've always loved running and never lost that, so I wanted to try being a professional triathlete for a while. So I did that for a few years. I actually ended up going back to cycling for the Rio Olympics. But trying to combine cycling and triathlon was not such a good idea, it turns out, with hindsight. But yeah, then I retired sort of properly again in at the end of 2017, I think. Yeah.
You just published a cookbook,
Yes.
right? And your vernissage is this Saturday in Zurich, May 24th. And I understand the books that you can buy them at, you will be able to buy them at Oral Fürsli in downtown Zurich.
I think so you can actually already order them at Oral Fürsli and at all good bookshops, as they say. They don't have them in stock, though, so it turns out it's quite hard to do that. But anyway, you can order them in Switzerland and in the UK.
So tell us about the book. Hold up the picture so we can see it. It's called Ode to Joy, right?
Yes. So I cleverly forgot to bring the book with me, as we discussed before this recording. I was really busy at work and I totally forgot. But anyway, I left the book in the office. But it's called Ode to Joy, and it's half recipe book and it's half storybook with kind of stories. I guess it's kind of a memoir. It's not an autobiography, but it is autobiographical, the stories. So
Anecdotally autobiographical?
Anecdotes. Yeah, anecdotes. Yeah, chronicles or something. It was hard to find the right word.
Oticles?
Yeah. Oticles. Autobiographical articles.
Not articles, oticles. Right, exactly.
So all the recipes are oat-based. And it's also a book about, I think, finding the joy in various things, but especially in cycling and in sport, not just cycling. And half of the book is OT recipes that I invented them all. They're all things you can take with you, not necessarily on a bike ride, but hiking, skiing, to school, send with your kids to Kita. They're basically portable, healthy recipes that you can take them with you wherever you go. Because I got fed up of eating chemical food when I was racing. I wanted to eat real food, but I also wanted it to be easy to make because I'm not really a chef and I didn't have time to faff around with. If you have to puree a pumpkin, then I am not interested. That is too much work. They're all very easy recipes.
So you've now done just about everything I can imagine. You've got a PhD, you've got Olympic medals, you've got a cookbook, you were a television host on a YouTube channel, you're obviously a good baker. What's next? What do you do after all that?
Oh, you're very kind. I feel like I did. No, it doesn't feel that way. But I'm 42, and because of the racing, I put off starting real work, if you like. And my PhD took longer than it should have done, and then I did race full time for a while. I put off restarting work as an engineer for quite a long time because I also worked in sport after racing. I thought when you stop racing, you generally get offered a load of interesting sounding opportunities, and they were interesting, but I realized after a few years that working in sport was not for me. So anyway, I went back to what I'd call what my mum would call a real job a year and a half ago. So I work at a small Zurich company called Dr. von Moos AG, and we with a lot of geologists and other geotechnical engineers, and lots of ETH alumni actually. Kind of hope they don't hear this. It'd be a bit embarrassing, but I love it. It's really interesting. I think if I had realized how interesting the real life application of my PhD and my study was, then I would have stopped racing much sooner. But sometimes it is really different working. Most people know this, but like working in real life is really different from a PhD, and I love it. I find it really interesting. I've got really interesting colleagues, and so for me at the moment, quite a lot of my energy goes into that because it probably takes a few years to really learn to the ropes, let's say, and the vocabulary. So my German is I'd say fluent, but one's vocabulary is always context specific, and I did not have the appropriate vocabulary until recently. My PhD was all in English, apart from socially when I spoke German. But so that's I'm really enjoying that work. So I work with in Altlastensanierung, Naturgefahren, and lots of Baugrundberichte, so natural hazards, contaminated land, and just lots of building projects. That's fascinating, and that's most of what I do. And I really enjoy that. And my book, I'm just interested in preaching the joy of oats, let's say, to the world.
That is wonderful. And Emma, thank you so much. I'd love to ask you a few closing questions that we ask all of our guests, if that's okay.
Yes.
So when you were a little girl, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be an artist.
An artist? What kind of artist?
Painting, yeah.
Do you still paint?
Occasionally for special occasions, but it's been put aside by
what, 3 full-time careers?
The book, so I think I really like being creative, and my painting is not very good, but I think I'll have more capacity for that when the book is out of the way. Yeah.
Did you illustrate the book?
No, the cover illustration, I would just like to mention the illustrator of the cover is a guy called Eric Schuurman. He's Dutch. He's the friend of an old teammate of mine who I'm still in touch with from racing days. She works as a designer she makes cycling clothing. She's not an ETH alumni because she is an impressive person, Iris Lappendal. But anyway, Eric is a friend of Iris, and Eric illustrated the cover, and I love his illustration, and I could not have done that because I think a good illustration is not just about drawing, it's about
what it says.
Yeah, you've got to take what someone tells you and turn it into something beautiful. So yeah, I can't do that, but I like drawing. I draw silly things for my brother and sister, my nieces and stuff. So yeah, that's about it. Yeah.
What are you curious about today? What are you learning about?
I would like to read more philosophy, I think, in the next few years. But I couldn't tell you exactly what. I've got to read it first.
It sounds like you're learning a lot in your new full-time job.
Yeah.
But philosophy is a pretty inspiring thing in these days.
Yes, it has. I think it's amazing how some old concepts are still very applicable.
So what are the books that are sitting on your bedside table or in your Kindle? What are you reading right now?
Oh, I have so many. I've got books that I've been half reading for 10 years, and I know that reading more makes you a better writer, so it would have been a better book, but I didn't have time to read. So yeah, I was reading a book called The Secret Life of Trees. I'm still reading it slowly, and there's another book that is really fun that I dip in and out of called The Etymologicon, which is what it sounds like. It's a book of etymology, which sounds really dry, but it's really interesting. And I love language, and my German when I think I said my German when I moved to Switzerland was poor, but I insisted on speaking German and not English, so I did learn German. And then after 5 years, I moved to Hausen am Albis, and I tried to start speaking Swiss German instead of
High German,
Schriftdeutsch, Hauptdeutsch, or however you call it, and so now I can sort of speak both. And now that I'm working in engineering, my German is on a learning curve again because there's all this specific vocabulary, but I love learning words, and so I find this book called The Etymologicon. It's about English words, but it's really interesting.
I totally into that. Our book at the dining table when I was growing up, my father was a professor of geography, was the Etymological Dictionary, right?
Oh, I need to look it up.
And it's just this big fat tome, right? It's hard to pick up, but it was a dictionary, but it focused on the etymological roots, or etymology of words is a better way to say it.
Yeah.
So Emma, we talked about how in some ways doing your PhD and pursuing a professional athletic career really reinforced each other, was helpful in ways you hadn't anticipated. If you were to give advice to somebody who was looking to pursue a master's or a PhD at the ETH and thinking of sort of doing that two things at once, whether it was athletics or starting a family or starting a company, trying to balance, what advice would you give them?
In my experience, most of the things worth doing in life are not easy, and the combination of two things, it feels very hard at times, but I think in the long run, it I don't want to say pays off, but I think it works out better. And what I found particularly stressful when I was racing and doing my PhD was this constant feeling of compromise, like, oh, I'm not good as an athlete and I'm not good as a PhD student, and I think that's partly based on the examples that are held up to us of like perfection, like Usain Bolt. That's the only kind of athlete you want to be, like the absolute best in the world, and I assume doesn't do much else. If you have two things going on, you can sometimes weight them differently. A bit like when you're skiing, you can put more weight on one leg and more weight on the other, and you'll be glad in the end that you've got, if you can balance on two things in the end, let's say. But what I would say is that trying to do too many things, if you're trying to do 10 different things really well, that becomes too much. I found that I had to choose, two things to focus on or three things to focus on, and too much is too much. But I do think it's possible to be excellent at more than one thing. Just be relaxed sometimes if you're not always the Usain Bolt of parenting or whatever.
That's a great expression. Emma, thank you so much.
Thank you, Susan, for having me. It's been a delight. Sorry, mega schön gewesen.
I'm Susan Kish, host of the We Are ETH series, telling the story of the alumni and friends of the ETH, the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology. ETH regularly ranks amongst the top universities in the world in terms of their research, their science, and their people. The people who were there, the people who are there, and the people who will be there. Please subscribe to this podcast and listen to us wherever you subscribe, and give us a good rating on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube if you enjoyed today's conversation. I'd like to close by thanking our producers at ETH Alumni and at LE Media, and especially to thank you, our listeners, for joining us today.